All right, welcome to week 15, video 4, where we're going to talk about how could we form 3D shapes from rotating a 2D shape around an axis. So imagine this um, like what would you get if you unfold an accordion, or like those post-it notes that are in accordion style. What shape would you get when you do that? So that's exactly what I have. I have a pile of post-it notes. I didn't have the fancy accordion one, so I had to make them accordion myself, which is not fun. But we have a square shape, and this will be my axis. So we're going to say if we rotate that square shape around the axis, what are we going to get? That's the question that you have to answer on Khan Academy. So let's see what happens when we have this easy square shape. All right, it is not easy to do this. I'm going to do it first and then put my axis in. All right, if we have this square shape getting rotated around the axis, and my post-it notes are becoming undone. That's not fun. Okay, let's try that again. If we have our accordion post-it notes and they're rotated around the axis, right, we end up getting a cylindrical shape. And now imagine if we had so much more post-it notes, right, where instead of seeing it like a flower shape, we see it as a solid cylinder. That would be from a rectangle or a square, we would get a cylinder. So no matter what we're rotating by, right, we always get this circular shape. We're always going to form like a cone or a cylinder or like something else, right? So let's say if we still have this post-it note design, but let's say instead of the post-it notes being right up against the axis, what happens if there's a space in between the axis and our shape? So I'm going to demonstrate this with this candle lid. And they're coming apart. Only I could go to the store. All right. So let's rotate this around the candle lid to pretend like our shape that we're rotating around the axis is kind of far away from it. So we can see if these post-it notes would just stay together. We could see that instead of a cylinder, we get like a donut shape, right? But instead of it being a donut, it's like a square donut, right? All right, so that's what happens when the axis isn't touching the shape but is a little further away. We get that gap in between, that circular gap. So what happens with, instead of squares, we have other shapes. So I made some, again, with post-it notes, so bear with me as they're probably going to fall apart. But this time we have a triangle. So if we rotate this triangle around an axis, I said post-it notes rotate around an axis. I just don't understand why they don't want to listen to me. Okay. I did practice this, and it worked much better during practice. All right, so we have the shape that's formed by rotating a triangle around, and I'm going to stick my pen in there so we can see the axis easily, right, around this axis. And we end up getting a cone. What happens, though, if we rotated it around this way? Right, and we're just going to ignore the pencil because that's actually making stuff way more difficult right now. But let's say we're going to rotate that triangle around the inside. We're going to get this weird shape, kind of like a satellite, right? And if maybe we look at it from this way, we can kind of see it better. If we had rotated it around the candle lid, again, it's still going to look like the same thing, but there's going to be that gap in the middle. Again, notice how we're getting this circular shape. There's no way that we're not going to get anything that's not circular because we're rotating in a circular motion. All right. So think about, like, those party decorations that you can unfold and they turn into like a pumpkin or a turkey with its feathers all fanned out, or like a ball that you put up during the summer, just like a colorful ball or something like that. That's a great example of a shape that's made by rotation. So maybe if I end up at a Meijer or a Target later this week, I can show it to you. But here's an example of, here we have a sector. All right, and let's try to rotate this around an axis as well. All right, so here we can see we're not getting a cone, we're not getting a cylinder, but instead we're getting like a hemisphere, so a half a sphere, right? If we had, instead of, if we had two of these, right? So if we had a semicircle and then unfolded it around an axis, we would get a complete sphere, right? And again, if we rotate it the other way, we get a crazy weird shape, kind of like the like a funnel would go in here or something. If we rotated it around an axis that was not touching the shape, instead of getting a hemisphere, we're getting a hemisphere that has a big hole in it. So maybe I'll try to find another video of someone whose Post-its notes don't keep breaking like mine. Maybe I'm trying to have tissue paper before this. Let's see if this is better. No. So I apologize for this. This is what happens when you try to make videos when you can't leave the house to buy proper materials. But imagine always, when you have these types of problems, when we're rotating a shape around an axis, imagine what side, right? What side is going to stay stationary because it's touching the axis, right? And that will be what doesn't move and what fans out around it. And again, whatever we're rotating is going to form a circular shape because we're rotating, right? So if we have a crazy shape, like I said, like a semicircle, because we're rotating it around an axis, it's going to turn into a sphere. And I'm trying to illustrate that with these accordion Post-it notes, but again, because I made them myself, it looks like the adhesive is coming apart. But that is the best video I could think of to make to help you with those Khan Academy exercises. But again, imagine axis is the point that everything rotates around, and then imagine what type of circular shape is formed with it. If the shape is not touching the axis, that means we're going to have that gap in the middle. But we're always going to get some type of circular shape, and we have to think what's touching the axis, because that's going to be the center of the circular shape. Think about the height and how it gets rotated around the axis. Again, I'll try to find like a computer-generated video about this that's not made out of Post-it notes. But good luck.